Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to another tank review. This time we are looking at one of the Russian tier 7 medium tanks, the KV-13. This is a machine you don't really see very much on the battlefield, and I'm going to attempt to answer the question as to why. Why do you not see this thing very much? So, first of all, let's just quickly go through the stats that are presented to you in the garage. This thing has 1120 hit points, which is pretty much par for the course for a tier 7 medium tank. Its engine power of 600 and its weight of 35.5 basically tons mean that the power to weight ratio on this tank is all right, but not spectacular. Top speed of 50 km an hour is fairly healthy. Traverse speed and turret traverse are 40 and 48 degrees per second respectively, which again are pretty healthy, and is starting to give the flavour for what this tank is about. It turns well, the turret turns well. This is a tank that likes being up close, personal and in your face. Having a look at the armour, the numbers are actually pretty impressive. 120mm on the front, 85 on the side, 85 on the rear on the hull, 100 on the front, 90 on the side, 90 on the rear on the turret. And this is one of the defining features of the KV-13. It's a very well armoured medium tank. It's basically armoured like a stock IS. But bearing in mind this is a medium tank that will do 50 km an hour and turn at 40 degrees a second. None too shabby, but we'll have a look at the armour in a bit more detail in a moment. There's some gun stats here, but I'm going to have a look at the gun in a minute anyway. 360 meter view range is a bit on the underwhelming side, but it's not completely awful. But this thing is rather short-sighted, so it does give you some limitations on what you can actually achieve. And 625 meter signal range is again not particularly fantastic. These sort of mid-tier Russian radios tend to be a bit bad, but it's not utterly awful. And in fact, this is a tier 9 radio in order to get it up to that range, but it's not completely dreadful. So let's just take a quick look at the gun. Well, sorry about that. There's a selection of different guns to mount on this tank, and they're going to look remarkably familiar if you've played any of the other Russian tier 7 medium tanks. Okay, let's go through them. Now, there's only a few that are really of proper interest. Let's start off proceedings with this, the 76mm Zis 5. This is a horrible, horrible, horrible little gun. Technically it says it's used on the KV-13, T150, KV-1 and KV-1S. This is basically the stock gun from the KV-1. 86mm of penetration, 102 with APCR. Ugh, you do not want to be using this gun, and you don't have to, but we'll get onto that in a bit. So let's ignore that gun. 76mm S54. Now, this is a gun you might recognise from the T34. It was the top 76mm gun on that tank. On the KV-13, it's not great. 125 pen, 156 with APCR, ammo, 115 damage, 110 with APCR, 0.41 accuracy, which is bad, 2.9 second aim time, which is also bad. It has a high rate of fire, but because of the underwhelming alpha damage, it means that the DPM on this gun is not actually the best. I mean, it's alright, but the bad penetration, bad accuracy and bad aim time on this gun mean that it's a bit dodgy. Having said that, this is the gun that I initially used on this tank. I used as my quote-unquote stock gun, because you can have it unlocked from the T34, you've got it available, and if you're top tier, I mean, you can rack up some damage using this gun. But you don't want to use it any longer than you have to. U11 122mm stubby little howitzer. This is a viable option on this tank. For grinding purposes. Load high explosive, load some heat ammo. 140 penetration is not amazing, but it's about the same as a lot of the tier 7 medium tanks have anyway. And the KV-13 likes to be in people's faces, and 370 alpha damage with a 5.26 rate of fire isn't too shabby. So this is an option, but this is your standard kind of tier 5 derp gun. It's not the gun you ultimately want to be using on this tank. Then you have a choice of two other guns, two 85mm guns. In my opinion, you don't really ever have to use this D5T gun. It's your sort of pretty typical, slightly derpy, 160 alpha damage, 120 pen, Russian/Chinese 85mm gun. It's nothing too special, so I'm not going to talk about it in any great detail. This is the top gun from this tank. This is the same gun that you use on the T-43 and the T-34-85, so you jump up a tier, but you've actually got the same gun. So what do you get? Well, 10.17 rate of fire isn't too bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. 144 penetration with AP ammo is again alright. The fact that you use this tank up close and personal makes that a little bit better. Just under 200 with APCR, which isn't too shabby. 180 alpha damage, which is fairly healthy, and 300 alpha damage with HE ammo, which means HE is a very viable choice against many targets. 0.37 accuracy or dispersion at 100 meters is a bit dubious, but again, this is a tank that's not designed to be used as a support role. It's an in-your-face brawling medium, so that's fine. 2.3 second aiming time is very average. So this is not a bad gun. It's not a phenomenal gun, but it's not a bad gun. It gets the job done, which is really what you want, or what you need. So yeah, the gun is alright. The armour is good, but as I say, I will talk about that more in a moment. The mobility of this tank is good. It's actually all round a pretty good tank. So why don't we see it anymore? Well, let's have a look at the grind, shall we? Okay, so this is where you start to see why you don't necessarily see this tank a huge amount. Here we are at tier 7 KV-13. There are two ways of getting up to the KV-13. You can either go through the medium line, or you can go through the heavy line, or one of the heavy lines. But, well, okay. What about the grind up to it? Let's just talk about that for starters. Now, I did the grind through the medium line. So I played the T-26, which is an alright tier 2 tank, T-46, which is an alright tier 3 tank, T-50, which is... it doesn't get scout matchmaking anymore, so it's a fairly respectable tier 4 light tank, I found. T-34, which is a very ubiquitous machine, you get it all over the place. You can also get to the T-34 via the BT line, or the T-60, T-70, blah blah blah. I've spoken about those tanks a little bit when I did my T-34 review. T-34, not a bad tank. Then you have the T-34-85, from which you can unlock the KV-13 and the T-43. Again, I have a separate review on the 34-85, by all means go and have a look at it. It's a fairly decent machine. And then you get a choice of one of these two tanks. Your other option is slightly more convoluted. Again, T-26, T-46, T... but now you branch off to the T-28, which in my opinion is a fairly painful tier 4 tank. KV-1, which is a good tier 5 heavy tank, but then you have to sidestep to another tier 5 tank. You don't go to a tier 6 tank, to the rebalanced KV-1S. Now I haven't actually played the KV-1S in this form, I played it when it was still a tier 6 heavy tank. As far as I can see, it has the potential, if you're willing to fire some premium ammunition, to be overpowered. If you don't just spam gold ammo, then it's more mobile than the KV-1, it's got less armour, it's fairly well balanced. But spamming heat ammo with the howitzer can be pretty nasty, but you can do that in the KV-1, it's just the 1S gives you more mobility. Then the KV-85, again I haven't actually played this tank, but as far as I can see, it's a pretty good tier 6 heavy tank. It was designed to replace the old KV-1S. It still has the option of the 122mm gun, but more to the point, it has an option of a badass 100mm gun with an excellent rate of fire. So that looks like a very strong heavy tank. And then you get up here to the KV-13. Before I talk about the KV-13 grind, let's just have a look at where the KV-13 leads to. Well, you lead to one of two places. One, the T-43. Well, hang on a minute. We could get to the T-43 from the 34-85. So we're just sidestepping to another tier 7 tank. In fact, we don't have to play the KV-13 at all to play the T-43. Well, okay. Or it leads to the IS. Well, hang on a minute. If you play through the KV-85, and the Russian heavy line is very good, if you play through here, you just go from a tier 6 to a tier 7. Playing the KV-13 adds in another tier 7. You've already got to play another tier 5. So why would I do that? And this, I think, is why you don't see many of these tanks around. They don't take you anywhere on the tech tree. They give you the option, if you want, of going from the medium line down to the heavy line. And they're fairly good preparation for that, because the KV-13 does get good armour. But then you're skipping out these tanks, which are, in general, actually pretty darn good. And I would recommend playing them, I guess. So... well... okay, why did I play it? I played it firstly because I want to try every tank in the game, but also because by playing the KV-13, it actually reduced the XP I required for the T-43. Now, bear in mind, so let me show you what I mean. T-34-85, the T-43 is 53,000 XP. The KV-13 is... really? 65... okay, they've restructured this tech line. Alright, okay. It used to be, each of these medium tanks were a similar amount of XP to unlock, and they were a lot less than these numbers would have you believe. And if you get to the KV-13, the IS is 22,500 XP, and the T-43 is 22.2k XP. So basically you get cheaper research costs if you research the IS and the T-43 from the KV-13, because they are all tier 7 tanks. And so that might be an incentive to do it, but really the KV-13 is one of those tanks that you play for its own sake. You're not playing to go anywhere in the tech tree, because it doesn't lead anywhere in the tech tree, and as a result, I think you don't see it very much. Anyway, what about the grind on the KV-13 itself? Well, the top engine you will not already have unlocked unless you've been down the heavy line, and this is going to become a common theme. So if you've been down the heavy line at least as far as the KV-1S at tier 5, or you've been down the tank destroyer line at least as far as the ISU-152 at tier 8, then you will have the top engine for this tank. If not, you won't. Top radio is used on a whole variety of different tanks, but none of the preceding medium tanks. So again, you could have unlocked this on another tank line, but you won't have already unlocked this if you're just playing through the medium line. Or I guess you can get to it by the heavy line. So no, it doesn't look like you'll already have that unlocked. Turret, well, that will be unique on this tank. So in stock configuration, potentially, if you went, potentially you could have top engine, and sort of stock everything else, but with this S54 76mm gun. So all the rest of the guns come off from this turret. Now, if you've already played through the T-34-85, you will have all of these guns already unlocked, which means that you want the tracks, the turret, and then just mount this gun straight away. Don't bother with either of these two, they're not worth it, they're a waste of time. If you come via the heavy line, you will not necessarily have these guns already unlocked. So basically the heavy line gives you the top engine, the medium line gives you the top guns. I'd already gone through all of them, so I had it all unlocked. I just needed the tracks and the turret. So that was the situation I found myself in. So this was a relatively painless grind, I found. Although it might be more painful for you depending on exactly what you already have unlocked once you get here. So what about equipment and crew skills? Well, I just used a standard grinding set of equipment on this tank, but what would I recommend you take if you want to keep it? Well, there's a variety of different options I think you could choose. Toolbox is not a bad choice, because you will get tracked an awful lot. This is a medium tank, but it has a good amount of armour. So, toolbox is not a terrible idea. I haven't noticed any particular problem with the fuel tanks, so I wouldn't bother with filling tanks with CO2. Torsion bars, nah. Enhanced gun laying drive, maybe, because this tank does not get access to a vertical stabilizer, so this is an option. Cyclone filter, nah, haven't noticed any particular engine problems. Coated optics, I wouldn't bother, because 10%, the view range isn't great. An extra 10% on top of not particularly great is not fantastic for 500,000 credits, so I wouldn't bother with coated optics. Binocular telescopes, however, an extra 25% on top of not great starts becoming fairly respectable, so you might want to take binos. Gun rammer, good choice, more higher DPM. Your DPM's not fantastic on this tank, so a bit more would be nice. Spore liner, I wouldn't bother. Wet ammo rack, I haven't noticed any particular ammo rack problems. Vents are an option. Camo net, nah, there's not really much point. If I were loading this out, and going to keep it, I'd probably take a gun rammer, binocular telescopes, and either improved vents or an enhanced gun laying drive. They'd probably be my recommendations. Crew skills, well, I don't currently have my crew sitting in here, but I would recommend 6th sense on your commander, repairs on your gunner, driver, either repairs or preventative maintenance. You do seem to get set on fire a little bit in this tank, although it's not completely horrific, up to you. Loader, probably repairs again. I haven't noticed any particular ammo rack problems, but you might want to consider safe stowage depending on how many skills you have on your crew. Consumables, I just take the standard 3. I mean, you could go for improved combat rations or something like that, whatever it's called, extra combat rations. Yeah, Lend-Lease oil, maybe, but you know, your standard 3 are perfectly serviceable. And then you can play away in this tank, and it's pretty good. So let's have a look at the armor, and then I'll show you a couple of games. And the games I'm going to show you, they're not fantastic. They're going to highlight some of the strengths and in particular some of the weaknesses on this tank, including the uninspiring gun depression. But for now, let's go and have a quick look at the armor scheme. So here we are in Tank Inspector. Just before I talk about the armor, I'll quickly mention that the gun depression on this tank is 5 degrees, which if you are driving Russian mediums, you should probably get used to. Which means it's not appalling. The Chinese tanks tend to get worse gun depression, but it's certainly not great, and it can be rather frustrating. So, armor scheme. Armor. Right. Let's start off with the turret. Rear of the turret, 90mm, with a weak spot where there's this machine gun poking out, which is common on the KV series of tanks, or the IS tanks. That's 60mm, but realistically most things that are shooting you are going to go through this, except possibly some light tanks. Side of the turret, again, still 90, ditto applies, most things that shoot you are going to go through that. Front of the turret, well, you have kind of 100mm on these cheeks, but they can be penetrated. Gun mantlet, which combined with the turret front makes for some rather thick armor, but you get to the gun itself and that armor kind of goes away. And ditto on the other side, and you do have a commander's hatch which is 90mm thick. So the turret is not awful from the front, but it's not brilliant. People can certainly penetrate you from the front, and from the side and rear the turret armor's, you know, nothing to get excited about. What about the hull? Well, rear of the hull, at the bottom here is 85mm, and at the top here is 60, but with sloping. I mean, realistically, again, people are probably going to penetrate you here, but if you are driving a light tank, maybe a tier 5 light tank, like the Chaffee or something, and you've got behind this thing, try and aim for this section of the rear of the hull, where this big plate is, rather than this bottom bit. You'll notice, however, that this bit that sticks out, this sort of radiator, that's not actually a hitbox, so don't shoot that. If you do, you're going to go into this turret ring or something. Side armor. Well, it's 60mm or 85, depending on which bit of the hull you look at, but it has some big chunky tracks covering a good chunk of this. And what that means is that with some angling, this tank is a pretty nice side scraper for a tier 7 medium tank. Frontal armor, you've got this plate of 60mm, which with some angling goes up to 106mm, but that angling is not sufficient to make this an auto bounce angle, so this can be penetrated. You then have 120 along the front here. Again, you're looking at about 180 effective armor, 114-ish here. Down here, you're looking at closer to 120. So the lower plate is a weak spot, but actually the weakest armor on this tank is this sloped plate here, realistically, from the front. But get some side scraping going on, and you can get some good bounces from this tank, which I've done myself, you know, against a variety of different machines. This is especially true if you're top tank in this machine. So top tier. I mean, I should note there's actually a weak spot here of 113, but frankly, unless they're covering up their lower plate, you might as well just shoot them here. But most guns, if it's just driving straight at you, a lot of guns that this is going to meet are just going to bounce off, but lower tier tanks or same tier medium tanks might have trouble. The armor is good enough to get bounces in the right situation if you know what you're doing, which is a nice feature to have on a medium tank, and really one of the strong features of this machine. And as I say, it's helped by the big old fat tracks. So that's the armor. Let's just jump into a couple of games and I will show you how this thing seems to perform. Here's game number 1. This is a tier 7 game, so we're top tier, and we are here on mines, and it's a standard game. This replay is very much going to be showing you some of the strengths and indeed some of the weaknesses of this tank. Yes, so thoughts. KV-13 is pretty mobile, has decent armor, so I'm going to try and bum rush the hill. Looking at the team setup, both sides have a respectable number of medium tanks, so the fight for the hill could really go either way. However, none of their medium tanks are top tier. I'm top tier, our A44 is also top tier. So, our A44 is not going this way. Okay. But I'm still top tier, so hopefully we might be able to bully our way through to be on the hill itself. Which will be nice, right? Okay, Leopard doesn't want to go first, that's understandable, therefore I shall lead the glorious charge. Now it looks like a VK has already made it up there. Oh my god, Sherman Jumbo. Ow, ow, ow. Bounce on the Sherman Jumbo. Ow, that's my bum. Oh, I'm tracked, this is bad. Repair the track. Put a shot into that VK. Ow, ow, ow. And my priority here is trying to get something between myself and all of those people over there who want to hurt me. I take another hit there, but here we go. Angle, bounce. Keeping my tank angled, not giving him any flat surfaces to hit. Is that high explosive? Oh well. He takes out my driver, but coming up there, we took a battering. Yes. You could argue that wasn't worth it, but when we had to take on that VK, that tier 6 VK, we were able to angle our armour and basically bounce whatever he threw at us. I think he resorted to high explosive in the end in order to try and get some damage in. So, we've got the hill. Huzzah! They didn't invest all that much up here, so we're currently winning 4 kills to 1. So now that we've got the hill, I should be able to make some use of it, right? Right? Because if I can't, it was a bit pointless coming up here. Well, you'll see. So, coming around here, I'm being a little bit cautious because I have so little health, and I could quite happily be blitzed by someone. And nope, don't want to go out there and spot anything in case I get spotted, so let's just go around this side of the map. Oh, maybe I can get some shots on that ELC, that'd be good. Stop the ELC going to wreck our artillery, that will definitely be beneficial, so let's try that. Here we go. And gun depression. Move back. He's now behind a building. This is the sort of thing you get used to in this tank. 5, I think it is, degrees of gun depression may not sound atrocious, and indeed it's not atrocious, but it's bad enough to make some positions that you wouldn't expect to be painful to use actually quite painful to use, including the hill on mines. And so, yeah, we managed to batter our way up here, great, but it's actually quite difficult for us to do anything now that we are up here. Partly because we lost so much health doing it, and so we have to be very careful about being spotted, but also because we don't have much gun depression, and so that really limits where we can effectively shoot. And that ELC is now in our base, for all the good I can do about it. Oh, I always forget they've slightly changed that rocky outcrop. I'm trying to spot something, or at least get some fire on someone if that T-49 does some spotting. I know there's a Tiger back there, not playing very well. Seriously, top tier heavy tank, do not sit at the back of the map on a sodding little ridge. You are doing it wrong if you do. Now I know we all go through this, we all have to learn, I guess, but I'm just trying to speed up people's learning process. And gun depression fail. Ugh, so I would have to expose a lot of my tank to get shots over there. Thankfully, it doesn't look like really anyone from the left would be able to get shots on me. And there we go, right. I've managed to bring my gun to bear, but the guy is no longer spotted. I should have probably taken a blind shot there, but I'm slightly more concerned with the 87, who appears to be trying to harass our T-49, and indeed successfully harasses him to death. Put one shot into the side of the 87 there, but the 87 decides that he doesn't want to just let me unload onto his side armour. How terribly inconsiderate. And he moves off. And he comes around that corner, and that shot misses. So I pull back, because I do not want to get shot in return. I'm just trying to work out what it is I can actually do here. And it is actually crossing my mind, and you might be thinking, wow, this has taken way too long for you to think of this, but it is actually crossing my mind. I'm up here on the hill, but am I actually achieving much that's very useful? I can't even get a shot on that BK. He's already dead. What am I actually achieving up here? Well, the answer is not a fat deal of much. So should I even be up here? Well, that's a good question. Maybe I should just come down from here, and suddenly there's only 2 of them left. That Tiger and the 87. Ah, screw this. Fine. I spent all that effort and health getting up here, and now I'm just going to drive down. But that's the thing. With 5 degrees of gun depression, the hill is actually not a very good place for one to go. Nope, no shot on the Tiger. Oh, no, Tiger's dead. That just leaves this 87, who is behind a building. So, let's put the mobility of this thing to good use. This is not a sniping machine. This is an in-your-face brawling medium tank. And you can see the speed is not to be sniffed at. 87 has fired, but he fires so quickly that doesn't necessarily mean a great deal of much. Someone knocks his track out. I bounce on his side, get behind him, and this guy is totally screwed. SU-100 actually bounces on his rear arm by the look of it. Put another shot in, and he appears to be trying to wedge himself in such that he can make sure he gets this kill or something. But there we go. I actually end up with the kill myself, and that was the game. And I just wanted to highlight, A, the armor on this thing's pretty good, B, the mobility is fairly respectable, C, the gun depression is frustrating. Anyway, that was game number 1, in which we're top tier. So, as per usual, game number 2 will be the opposite scenario, where we are bottom tier. As promised, here's a replay in which we are bottom tier. Nice to say in chat. Last game was Ace Tanker. Let's see what this game is like. So yes, we are bottom tier here. This is a tier 9 game. It's also on Redshire, which is a map with lots of hills that likes gun depression. And I covered the gun depression in the last video. Or last replay. Ugh. So this could be a nuisance. Oh well. Great. Let's go. Now, this is an encounter game, I should also mention, so there is the central capture point at E4. So, I'm just pondering what it is I'm actually going to do this game. I don't want to go to any of my regular spots, because they would benefit from gun depression, which, as we've already established, is not this thing's forte. So instead I'm going to try going to the other side of the map, and try and give some support to the guys over here. Now you might say that knocking over all those fences was a terrible idea, and indeed, in general, you would be correct, but it's probably worth noting there's no artillery in this game. And that's not a bad way to start. Our T-69 manages to clip the enemy T-20. So we're winning by 1 kill already, which is nice. And up here... And you can see, to get the gun depression to shoot in that direction, I'm kind of... my tank is pointing upward, but my gun is over the side, vaguely pointing down. And there's a Carnarvon. Can I get a shot on him? Come on! No, I can't. Ooh, Jagdpanther. He appears to be behind a rock. How terribly inconsiderate of him. And that shot misses, and an IS just nukes him from behind. So we're winning by 2 kills. Carnarvon again. Gun depression, gun depression. There we go. This appears to be a dude with a stock turret. Oh, you poor guy. You have my commiserations. He's actually seen me. I put in another shot to keep him tracked, and then I back off. Now, he's using, by the look of it, the 17-pounder gun. Another shot in. So I don't have too much to worry about in terms of damage from him. I lost a couple of hundred health. It's not the end of the world. You know, about 300. But I managed to pick up some XP
for putting shots into him and for tracking him while the team worked him over. We just lost our first tank, taken our first casualty, KV-5. This is not a particularly good map for the KV-5. And so we are winning 4 kills to 1. E75 is over there. Trying to see if I can do anything about that, but it's a bit awkward. Now you can see they have an awful lot of their team at E0. And there's the E75 and gun depression fail. Not that I'd probably be able to damage an E75 with this gun anyway. I imagine I'd have to load APCR in order to do anything at all, or have a chance of doing anything at all. But I don't have a shot on him regardless. And now it's 6-2, 6-3. The guys from the enemy team on the far right hand side on the 0 line do appear to be breaking through, which is a concern. So I switch flanks by the look of it and go over there. Or do I? Or do I just sit in the cap circle? I cannot remember. I doubt I just sit in the cap circle. That's not what I usually do. But there's an AMX 5100. Someone needs to do something about him, so round the side and put a shot into him while he's unloading on someone else. And there's shot number 2, trying to use him as cover from the Jagdtiger 88, and he gets taken down. Speaking of that Jagdtiger 88, this is never going to penetrate. Oh, guess what? It bounced. So, we're winning 8 kills to 7. I still don't think this is necessarily the right time to cap. I'm not going to blame that T69 particularly because he's got bugger all health anyway. Instead, I'm going to try and get shots on these guys. So, Rheinmetall Borsig. Low damage roll, but never mind. So average damage on this gun is 180. That shot just missed. I don't appear to... Oh no, I do have a shot on the side of that E75, but with regular ammunition... Oh, I track him. With regular ammunition, you can actually bounce on the side of an E75, which can be frustrating. Oh, Borsig is down, E75 is down. T29 off in the distance. Side shots. There we go. We'll take these all day. But he's backing off. How terribly unsporting, and I've just lost my nice juicy... Oh, side shots, but I do manage to put one into there. I'm not sure exactly what it's into because replays at the moment are not showing you the outline of tanks, which is annoying. We are, however, capping. That one missed. And that's the win. 5 enemy tanks left, but we still win. So there we go. And you can see that the accuracy on this gun is not brilliant. The gun depression again was a problem, but you have respectable alpha damage when you do hit compared to a lot of the tier 7 medium tanks, making it actually a reasonable gun. It's not a terrible gun, and so you can still do some damage in a tier 9 game. So have a look at the post-battle results, and then we'll jump back to the garage. Alright, what do I think of this tank overall? Is this a bad tank? No. Is this a good tank? It's pretty decent. I'm not going to say it's the best tank in the world, but it's pretty decent. Am I going to keep it? No. It lacks flexibility from my perspective. I'd like a bit more gun depression, and it just doesn't have it. That's my main quibble with this tank. Also, the view range is a bit uninspiring, but anyway. Who would I recommend this for? Well, if you're a heavy tank driver and you want to get into medium tanks, this is not a bad place to start, because you still have good armor, but you now have mobility. And ditto, if you're a medium tank driver and you're trying to get into heavy tanks, this is not a bad place to start, because you start getting the armor that you would get on a heavy tank or something similar, but you've still got the mobility. So I think this is actually a pretty good tank for people who are looking at transitioning between those two vehicle classes. And perhaps, you know, I think this is worth a go. I think this is a very overlooked machine, and if you... I just think it's fun, and I would recommend at least giving this tank a go and seeing how you find it. I think it's a good, fun machine, and I do recommend it. I'm not actually going to keep it myself, but, you know, if I wanted to play a tier 7 game, there are other tier 7s I would rather play.
but it's a good machine, and I would recommend you guys going out to try it. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that review, possibly even found it vaguely informative. If you did, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel, and I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.